Hey y'all, welcome to Art of the Budget. My name's Nicole. My pronouns are she and her, and I live in the Pacific Northwest on the traditional unceded territories of the Coast Salish Nations. Today we're doing a budget plan. This is for November 2021. Violet is here hanging with us. So yeah, let's get into it. I'm gonna say this in every video this month, but I can't believe it's November. It feels wild to me. I have started looking at my 2022 budget, my year projection, and it is very interesting as I finish out this year. Of course, as you know, one of my goals for sort of finishing out the year is to boost my emergency fund back up to where it was. I don't know if I'll get there by the end of the year, but I did use some money basically to fund my trip home. I typically do a trip home at the end of the year, and for the last several years I've paid for the bulk of it with points from credit card hacking, but this year I did not have any points left because I went to Florida twice in the summer. I think kind of just re-entry after COVID wildness. But yeah, I'm planning to go in December, provided it all feels safe still. I'm hoping to get my booster shot in the next month or so, since I'm an educator and I'm working with students in person again. I believe I am eligible. So yeah. Anyway, let's get how about y'all? How's the end of the year kind of going for you? Let me know down below in the comments. If you are new here, thanks for stopping by. If you're returning, as always, thanks for helping me stay accountable to my budget. And let's get into the plan. Of course, if you have been watching these videos, you know I am a month ahead, so I'm budgeting off money that I made in October. I know exactly how much money I made, but I still budget off of this base amount. It just helps my brain to have a little bit of cushion built in. So we're budgeting $4,000. This is my base income, and this used to say my base income and my adjunct pay, because I adjunct a class. I teach a class at the same college where I work. I am planning just, to get that little bit, $4 to $5 in interest income from my high yield savings account. And no account is particularly high yield at the moment, but I don't mind that couple of dollars. In sharing my income, I'll be doing the usual $150 for sharing and $60 for art. November is always a nice time for this budget because I sometimes do a few sales, but I definitely go to a lot of local artists and craft artist sales, and I love it so much. You can see a lot of my collection right back there. Anyway, to my emergency fund, I'm going to send $150, and that is going to not bring me particularly close to that normal 10 grand. And also I just want to explicate. So I kind of have 10 grand of emergency fund, but when COVID started, I moved some money around. So I essentially had 12 K, or technically this is 4 months of 4 months of take-home pay, but it could be stretched to longer. And that was just a little thing I did to feel more comfortable during the pandemic. And that extra money just stays in my checking account. So I guess I technically have 12,000 in my emergency fund, but I only keep 10,000 of it in a separate account, if that makes sense. It's sort of just evolved that way over time, but it works for me. So yeah. Next month is just for what I get paid this month. This little line doesn't really go anywhere. And again, my little bit of interest from my emergency fund goes into this random separate savings account, and I've got at the end of the month, I'll have almost $430. So that's pretty cool. Okay. Investment, as always, I will close out my Roth, $500. That will mean that I maxed it for the year. I know I say this all the time, but it just feels wild to me that I'm able to do that. And actually, I'm excited to share some investing milestones with you in the next month or two. Um, Moving on, my housing costs are pretty similar to always. Rent is 1100. Electricity, I always say about 40. And it's usually less, but then sometimes it's over. So 40 has always worked out to be a pretty good number. I know that people have talked about energy costs going up, so we will see. And then my phone is about 60 a month. Internet is running about 90 right now. I need to call and do my yearly negotiation, but honestly, I just have not been in the mood. I've been putting it off. But yeah, it's definitely crept up over the years from like $60 to 90 now. For groceries, I am giving myself my usual 300. For restaurants, 100, household 20, and kittles. This is for like everyday things like food and litter, giving them 100. I do spend a lot of money on my cats. If you are not familiar, they are very high maintenance. So that is just the basics that I will spend on them for their expensive but healthy for them food and their litter. And then, of course, they get medications every month. But that all comes out of my sinking fund, which is down below. Anyway, guys, I'm going to stick to this 100 car registration. I just paid it. So I'm going to start putting $10 a month. It's about 120, sometimes a little less. So yeah, start putting that $10 a month in. For fun, I'm going to give myself $100. For auto insurance, that's about $100. And now let's look at sinking funds. Health fund, I'm giving myself 60. I'm going to put a little bit more money in here, but then I'm going to stop. And that is because I will be doing an FSA. It is currently open enrollment, and I will be doing an FSA to take that money from, like, to use any money for health stuff as pre-tax money. That is FSA stands for Flexible Spending Account. Yeah, man, you just get so used to throwing those acronyms around. But yeah, if anyone doesn't know, that is different than a health savings account, and they're both pretty cool vehicles. They just work a little differently. So yeah, cat fund gets 300. I like to keep this as close to 1,000 as possible. In my dream world, there would be $5,000 in there, but unfortunately, that's not the case. Although I did get this amazing blessing this year, where someone I know put $1,000 on my account at the vet's office. This is their main vet, so it doesn't apply to the specialists or the pharmacies, but I do get a good amount of the medications from them, and I do go get their yearlies and checkups. So I mean checkups, if something were weird, I would go to that clinic. So that has really helped this year. It's amazing how quickly those medication costs have burned through a good amount of it, but that definitely has been a huge blessing. For car upkeep, I'm throwing 50 in there. Again, in my dream world, we would get this to 5,000 or 6,000. Of course, this is for any repairs or any maintenance, but also one day it will be for replacing my car. With my sinking funds, I'm always trying to have emergency funds before the emergency fund. So obviously, if my car were to get totaled and I needed to buy a new car, I would dig into my emergency fund. But the goal really is to get this to the point where I could go here first, and have that security of emergency fund. It is really interesting to me that 6 years ago I had no emergency fund and really never had one in my entire life. And I just say that to say how quickly our requirements can change. I didn't have a financial security fund, but I did, and I do, and I always have, even when I didn't realize it, have a great social safety net in the form of family members and friends. So, it wasn't like I was operating with no net. I definitely had a lot of people who would do whatever they had to do to keep me safe. Thankfully, I never needed it in any major way. I'm like, is that true? But anyway, now I have this emergency fund and these little emergency funds, and they do help me feel very secure. They also help me feel like I could help someone if they needed it too. So anyway, Tech fund 25. I definitely neglected this fund last year, and then it was funny because I had to buy a phone and a computer, or was that the year before? So I will definitely be focusing in 2022 on beefing this up, and it would be nice to have about $1,000. I personally will not spend that much money on computers or phones because I tend to be very hard on electronics. So 1,000 really should be enough that if I needed to replace both of those things, I could. And that is just me. I just happen to be very hard on these types of things like phones. I drop them constantly. I have the most protection on my phone to the point where it's kind of hard to type. Because if I don't have that on, it will immediately become shattered. I don't know why. That is just my life. So anyway, I managed to get by and never spend more than like $300 to $500 on these items. Okay, anyway, moving right along. Gifts. I don't exactly know what my siblings and family is planning as far as gifts this year. We typically do a sibling secret Santa. So anyway, I'm just going to stuff a bit of money in there, and like anything that's left in there at the beginning of the year will be great for 2022 gifts. I don't tend to spend a ton of money on gifts. We're pretty realistic in my family, and about like just not, I don't know, not overdoing it in these like obligatory ways. But and like within my friend groups, I think we just gift each other when something comes up, or if we're just thinking of each other versus based on some kind of schedule or obligation. But anyway, winter coat clothing, it's going to get 0, but we'll see. I do notice that I really love thrift shopping. I think it's a way that I nurture myself when it's cold and stuff. And I also think it's just like a way I go and blow off steam. It's kind of fun doing the search. But anyway, upcoming travel, I'm putting 210 in there. I'm going to be traveling to Florida. Most of the travel stuff is already paid, but this will just be like incidental stuff. And then important stuff gets 0. I was like looking and realizing that I still have a bit of money in here, so that's pretty cool. That will roll over to next year unless something comes up. Down payment. I could probably put this in my emergency fund. I don't really need to put money in here. I'm probably not going to buy a house anytime soon, but I think for me this year, this was not something I planned to really beef up. And then it turned out I was able to do that. And so I just like the idea of getting to the 2,000 mark. And I'll probably put any extra money just into my emergency fund next month. But yeah, I like that. And again, all of these funds are really like the pre-emergency fund, if that makes sense. But for my brain and the way I work, it helps to have these things separated out. It helps to have these things bookmarked for certain purposes. And furthermore, these are all separate bank accounts or the buckets at my bank. And that also really helps my brain. I know some people just have like a spreadsheet and then it's all in one account. But that really did not serve me. So this system works much better. And then last but not least, student loans get 0. And in January, it will get 0. But in February, we will be back to paying. And I'm not sure what my payment is. It had initially, I renewed my income, even though I didn't have to because of COVID. I'm on a schedule because I'm doing public service loan forgiveness. I don't like to deviate from my like very clear system. So I did that. And that was from my 2019 income, which if y'all remember, it was very high that year. I worked so many jobs. And so of course my payment went up. And before the initial like stopping of the forbearance, which did get extended, I was like, oh shit, my payment went up. I gotta put back in because I actually had worked much less. I didn't teach for 2 quarters during the pandemic, the beginning of the pandemic. So I recertified my income and so that I would have a more affordable payment since I didn't have all those jobs that I had in 2019. but I do not remember what my payment was. So I guess we'll see. Hopefully it's around the same. I think it was around $300 before the forbearance began. So yeah, that's it for me in November. I hope that you are all doing well. I hope this is a good chill month. I'm really planning for that, but we'll see what happens. October was not really crazy in any quantifiable way, but it did just feel like a month where I just had a lot of trouble with executive function. And that is just like the nature of life. It happens. So yeah, let me know how you're doing. And I will see you in the next video.